My name is Skylar Seidman, and I did not believe anxiety was a real thing. I always thought it was something that was fake and that people made up in their head until I experienced it for myself my freshman year of college. I remember waking up one morning, I felt really terrible. I went to the doctor and they told me I had the flu. So they gave me a combination of basically like an antibiotic and a steroid. And after about a week of taking those and getting over that sickness, I began to feel really anxious and exhausted. When I really first experienced anxiety, I'll never forget it. It was February 4th. I'd just gotten back after a weekend. I got back to Abilene, went in my dorm, put all my stuff down. It immediately felt like my whole world was crumbling in on me. So I went to my car and cried uncontrollably for multiple hours. And I was freaking out because I literally felt insane. I felt crazy because I had never experienced anything like this in my entire life. A lot of the thoughts that were going through my head were, man, my girlfriend's gonna break up with me. I'm not living a good enough life as a follower of Jesus. He doesn't want anything to do with me. I'm gonna lose all my friends. I'm not good enough to be in school and to make the grades to survive in college. I don't know what I want to do with my life. Just all these things kind of stacked on top of each other that really sent me into a spiral. And on top of all that, was feeling very anxious at the idea that I was having anxiety. And I never experienced anything like this before. And so those first 2 hours, I was really ashamed and didn't want to ask for help, but was extremely confused of why I was feeling this way. And this feeling of my life crumbling in on me did not go away whatsoever. Typical pattern of my behavior during this time was I'd go in my car. If there were guys in my room, if I was ever feeling anxious, I'd go cry until I felt even the slightest bit better. But the minute I'd step out the car, I'd get hit with it again. I'd go to class if I could make it to class that day. And if I couldn't stay through all of class, I'd leave class early, go back to my dorm, lay in a fetal position in my bed, and cry until I fell asleep. Like, I don't even know how to say it. Man, it just felt like it was never going to end. And I was really confused because I was always a happy person and never let really anything bring me down. But was genuinely just a happy person, and I wasn't happy. I'd say really the only times during all this time where I experienced like peace and almost a clarity and a burden being lifted is when times I'd spend like in worship and in prayer. And it was amazing, but it was also momentary because only a few moments later would it be would I feel pressed again. You know, looking back on this, I think this phase of my life really started addressing the pride that was in my own heart. I'd never been one to ask for help, to talk about my problems with other people because I always felt like I can handle them. I finally decided to call my mom and dad really after like a couple of hours in my car I couldn't stop crying. And I called and talked to them. Talking may be an overstatement. I literally cried into the phone, probably for the next hour and a half. They knew that something was up too, because this is something that they'd never seen in me before. So they immediately started bringing, family and close friends in on what was going on with me and asking for prayer. My mom and dad suggested that we go see a therapist, and I was not for it at the moment and didn't want to have to bring someone in to help me work through all this when I thought I could do it on my own. Not long after that, I started seeing another specialist who was having me make changes to my diet, doing different types of exercises to calm me down. I mean, all kinds of stuff that I was completely opposed to, just because I didn't think I needed any of that. But I did need it. And so I think one of the biggest problems for me was just raising my hand and saying like, man, I need help because I can't get through this by myself. So after several weeks of like my anxiety being at its most intense and doctors working with me, taking medication for all this, and my mom living with me in Abilene, my therapist referred me to just a local pastor in Abilene who had gone through the same exact stuff. And it was really comforting because when we were talking, he was finishing my sentences and like completing my thoughts, literally like knew exactly how I was feeling. Sometimes I didn't even have words for it, and he could explain it. So after talking just with him for a couple of hours, we went into a time of prayer, and he prayed over me, and we sat in silence for a little bit, and he asked me to picture like me and Jesus together. And this picture I got in my head was, it was me and Jesus, and we were in a dump, like garbage surrounding us, stacked infinitely high, to where like I can only see trash all around me, and then Jesus across from me. But his back was facing me. Like I could only see his back, I couldn't see his face. And it frightened me a little bit because like his back was turned towards me. So we continued praying. I asked Jesus to come closer, and he turned towards me and reached out his hand. And I reached out for his hand too. And then he snapped his fingers, and the whole place like erupted in flames. The dump that we were in, the garbage, like all of it was on fire. But I felt more at peace looking at him with his arms stretched out to me, with fire surrounding me, than I did with none of it on fire and his face turned away from me. And when I got up from that moment, I was crying. And I remember like opening my eyes, and for the first time, like feeling like I'm gonna be okay. Like it's gonna be okay. Like this does not have the final say. This is not where the road ends for me. And I slowly started to walk the road back to who God had created me to be. And it involved spending time in scripture, spending a lot of time in prayer, and a lot of time praying with other people. It involved being vulnerable, consistently vulnerable about how I was feeling. It involved being real with people. I mean, I'm more aware of my vulnerability and my fragileness without the presence of Christ in my life than I ever have been in my entire life. If you're being assaulted by anxiety, I want you to know that the Lord is near. Don't close yourself off. Open up to the Lord, and open up to the people around you. Open up to someone who's been through it before even. It takes 5 seconds of courage, 5 seconds of vulnerability, but it's the beginning to a whole and brand new abundant life with Christ.